Obviously, it's going to be a new person that you're going to be living with, new house, new everything. You don't know how the other person will take your habits, and
our parents were worried about that. How will that person take you in, and how will they treat my child, you would say.
It is hard leaving your home and starting off with somebody, because it's like you don't have your parents anymore, you don't have anybody, it's just yourself. So you gotta find a way. If there isn't food or you gotta work, you gotta get all that thing done, pay the bills, pay everything. It's not easy. You don't have help from your parents. It's basically you on your own.
I got married at 18 years old. I liked 5 days being 19. My mother-in-law picked out my wedding date, so it wasn't exactly what I had wanted, but it was very conciliatory, I guess, on my part.
Do you have any stories about in-laws?
Not that we will repeat.
I know, maybe we shouldn't say. It's better that way.
We hear the phrase leaving and cleaving within Christian circles, but what does that mean for a newlywed couple? First and foremost, it means that you're leaving things like your dependency on mom and dad, your single lifestyle, and personal baggage behind you. On the other hand, cleaving means to prioritize, unite with, and nourish your spouse. You're moving away from your old self and towards your new spouse. In Matthew 19:6, it says, "Since they are no longer two but one, let no one split apart what God has joined together." In Genesis 2:24, it says, "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and the two become one flesh." To you guys, being married, being engaged to be married, what does that mean?
We've been talking a lot about being selfless. You together are becoming this new thing that you weren't separately. And everything that you are, everything that you believe, everything that you hope for has come together and is tied together.
And with that, talking about leaving basically your parents and cleaving to your spouse, your allegiance shifts in a way. When I struggle with things, although sometimes I still go to my dad for advice, of course, I find that my husband is that for me now. And we are our own unit. We make decisions, we decide things, and then from us, it goes out.
Being engaged couples, how do you plan to form a new identity, form being that one flesh? Because now you're still engaged and you're working towards that, but you're not living together and you don't have the fullness of marriage. How are you guys planning to form that identity together?
So much of our preparation has been focusing on having children and being the parents that we want to be, since we didn't have examples of that in our own lives. You should be thinking about who you are going to be as a mother, who you are going to be as a father, because the relationship to your child is the relationship you should have to society as well, in a way.
There is the most basic of identities. I mean, you are both with this shared child, you're both in the shared goal of a healthy upbringing for a new life in the world, and so that is certainly one point where we have had a very strong agreement, thankfully. Maybe not necessarily in the child's name. Carrie didn't like that I suggested his middle name be Danger. But certainly on the upbringing and all the other goals and what we hope to nurture, I think absolutely that would become a major part of our shared identity and one of our very big common goals as a couple.
You don't understand what it means to become one until that, you know what I mean? And then going on to being 2.5 years married or whatever, you realize you're literally the same person. Like, you do have some differences, but you're thinking what they're thinking before they're thinking it. How have you guys as married couples noticed you've become one?
You realize that your purpose becomes now, how can I help us reach our goals that we have together? How can I contribute and make sure that we're following God's path and for our lives? You're just working towards the same goals, and your life becomes you're working towards not my goal, it's now our goals. And you don't really have my goal anymore. So I think that's the biggest thing I've realized.
When you're married, you are best friends, and you almost start to have your own little secret language. And so I actually found myself realizing that we were cutting each other off because we were enthusiastic about the same thing. But we realized we were so in sync and we're already thinking the same thing that it's almost like it wasn't even worth talking about anymore because we already were already there. I don't know. It's kind of fun that way.
What's cool is when you get to the bigger situations, obviously you always make big decisions with your wife, with your husband. But I know how she's gonna respond to just about anything I'm gonna ask her. It's cool. It's this union. It's becoming one. It's having this. Your thought processes work the same. You're on the same page. It's the coolest thing. That's one of my favorite things about marriage. Is like she mentioned, that inside joke that nobody else in the world thinks is funny, and I don't even have to say anything to her, and she gets it. Your thoughts and your actions and everything kind of align themselves together. The longer you're married, the more the better you learn to communicate with each other. It's a really exciting and fun thing. So.
And you know each other's codes. And I'm talking about blow-up codes.
Oh, yeah.
And I punch it in every single time. And it's like, don't press enter, don't do it. You know how he's gonna, it's like, enter. And you just sit back and watch.
Yeah.
The explosion.
So yeah, on the same note, the same things, that are gonna be great and fun and good, positive things, the things that are gonna tick that other person off, that are gonna set them off, the thing you shouldn't say, but you're mad at them, so you say it anyways, just because you want that response. It goes both ways, which is interesting to think about too.
I think when the scriptures say, leave your parents and cleave to your spouse, it's talking about commitment. That when you marry, your allegiance changes from your parents to your spouse. If ever there's a conflict between what you and your spouse believe you should do and what your parents want you to do, you always are with your spouse. And that'll take some time to learn how to do that because we have different ideas. And I think it has to do with sharing your ideas openly. How strongly do you feel about that? Why do you feel that way? Trying to understand each other and then finding something on which the two of you can agree on. So it's that attitude that we're committed to each other in all of life, in the decisions and everything that transpires in our lives. We're going to do this together. But we have to take the initiative. If we're the young couple, we have to take the initiative. There are times we have to say, Mom, I love you very much, but please let us choose our own furniture.
It's not that we're abandoning the beliefs that Mom and Dad placed in our heart, but Mom and Dad are no longer the primary influence in our life. They're no longer the priority relationship in the life. They move into the background, and now you and I have to take all of this and bring it together without our parents' help. We don't need them involved in helping us figure all this out. We want them to be advocates. We want them to sing and rejoice and delight and celebrate in our marriage without meddling in it. And that's a real fine line to walk. Have the conversations with your parents before it happens. So, don't wait until you're dropping your child off at your mom and dad's house to have a conversation about how you want your kids handled or dealt with. Have that conversation before you even have your first child. When you come to your parents with a boundaries conversation, right, that's always gonna have a more hostile tone to it of we gotta get some things straight. But what if you come to them with 5 ways you can bless our marriage and rest in this idea of blessing, more than, here's the gate and the fence, we're gonna let you in I think there's a lot clearer and honorable ways of doing that. But I also think a lot of couples young couples feel like it's their responsibility to change their parents somehow. I always think about this, you know, when you leave your parents' house and you sit in the car and you're talking about all the things they need to stop doing or change, or if they would only do this, understand they're having that same conversation about you in the house. I think everybody just needs to let others be. I think you'll have a lot better time at Thanksgiving and Christmas if you adjust your expectations, let your parents be, and realize, you know, you're in charge of your marriage.
He is his mother's favorite. So to leave that situation was quite interesting. I definitely felt what that was like. So John, I think you should share.
Well, and I was out on my own, but I was in the neighborhood I grew up in. So I really wasn't far from home. So we got together with my folks quite often. And Suzette being a little bit different than some of the other women that I had gone out with, and that my family was looking at different values and things, and she was Catholic and my family was Lutheran. There were some differences to overcome, and that took a while for my family to come around and see the beauty of who she is.
Cleaving means that your spouse becomes the most important person in your life, without exception. If you really want a new marriage, a new relationship where the two of you become one, that person's opinion of you has to be at the very top. You will offend your mom and your dad, everyone else, but you're going to protect that spouse first. There can't even be a close number two. That old statement about if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. If you have 2 or 3 loyalties, you don't really have one marital loyalty. So I would say this is one where you need to be cut and dried, and maybe even sound extreme to some people to really have that sense of truly cleaving.
If your parents, for example, are dropping in, let's say you're living in the same town, and they just drop in to see you, you know, whenever, without calling or anything, and you're going to find that troublesome. And I think you have to face it, because they're doing what's normal to them. They're just coming to see you, that's all, you know. And you have to let them know that it would be better, Mom, if you would call and let us know you're coming. That way we can expect it and be ready for it. And I think you have to be honest with them. It's always best if you speak to your own parents rather than speaking to your in-laws. The two of you talk about it, but then you address it to your own parents. But you do have to be loving and kind, but straightforward in requesting of them. Don't just complain. Give them a suggestion on how it could be better, how it would be better for the two of you.
The couples I work with, cleaving is a difficult issue. It sounds extreme, but what I'll say to them is if your spouse becomes number one in your life, you don't have a significant social relationship that your spouse isn't aware of. Basically, I wouldn't have somebody as a friend on Facebook that my wife was uncomfortable with me having as a friend. Why would I want to cause my wife any concern for the sake of another person that I'm not married to? So if she comes first, she can decide a lot of my social calendar or social. Now this will sound controlling, but when it's done voluntarily and in love, and look, my wife's not controlling over me, I'm not controlling over her because I want her best. You grow together or you drift apart. Not intentionally growing together is to unintentionally drift apart. And growing together means we have to create shared experiences, shared friendships, and exclusive loyalty. And that's hard to do. But if you're not willing to be difficult with the borders, so you're protecting the relationship, you can't have a relationship that will grow and thrive.
We look at couples that have been married 40, 50, and 60 years, and we're like, man, they stuck it out. They had the commitment. Well, commitment just doesn't float out there and we grab a hold of it somehow. Commitment flows directly from your character. They made the decision. We're going to stay together. Enjoying life together flows from the exact same place commitment flows from. It flows from your character. You have to decide, we're going to enjoy this. We take that which is potentially frustrating, annoying, those pet peeves that a lot of couples say, I'm just done with this, I'm gonna go find someone I'm more compatible with. Amy and I have decided, no, we're gonna take that and make the most of it. So we have found ways to enjoy every situation in our life and every circumstance in our life.
You've just shifted kingdoms. You've shifted the kingdom of parents to the kingdom of mate, and that has a higher priority. Now, the Bible is clear. We are to honor our parents. We are to hold them in high esteem, but they are no longer the deciding factor for the issues in my life. My mate is. And when it comes to decision making, the marriage relationship trumps the parent-child relationship.
Think of leaving not as severing, not as getting rid of, putting away. It's like a diseased limb. I'm going to cut that off, throw it away, never to see it again. That's not what the scripture means when it says that we are to leave our mother and father. In this case, look at it as a leave of absence. You think of a military term that someone's taking a certain amount of time to be away from their regular duties. As a matter of fact, in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, it says if a man has recently married, he must not be sent to war or have any other duty laid on him. For 1 year, he is free to stay at home and to bring happiness to the wife that he has married. That's a leave of absence. It's reprioritizing the relationships in our life. It's letting our parents know that you might experience me pulling away, pulling back. Don't personalize that. Don't see that as me rejecting our relationship, me abandoning how important the relationship is. Understand that next to God, this is my top priority. And it needs to have time immediately once we become man and wife. We need to give our marriage relationship time to create and to form this new identity.
You think about it, there's a verse in Ephesians, that's Ephesians 5:29, and it says, "For no one ever hated his own flesh, but he nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church." That, we talked about cherishing, that it's an attitude, kind of a mindset of valuing our spouse. But we can't just think about valuing our spouse. We actually have to put action to that. So during this cleaving time, we really need to figure out, how do we show them that we truly love them? The best way we have found to do this is to have them complete the sentence, "I feel loved when you ... Have them fill it out. It's a gold mine of information that we can use to understand what speaks love to them. How do we meet your need to feel loved? And that's exactly what it is. Help out with the dishes. That speaks love to me. And I don't know about you that would speak love to you.
Not on any level, but
So we have to discover that. There's a verse that talks about, let us not love with mere words, but in action and in truth. And so we want to figure out, how do we take this mindset of valuing them and putting action and behavior to it?
So as a new couple, one of the best things that you can do to leave and cleave is to figure out, what is your identity going to look like as a new marriage? And that's going to take time. So you need to reprioritize relationships and then figure out, what do we both need from each other? That's the cleaving part. That begins to define who you are, what you guys need, what you're going to be about.
So we're leaving, our former life, and we're cleaving to this new life, to this new union. And that really is what they're talking about. The scriptures are talking about when it says to leave and to cleave.
For me, it was really hard because I had lived alone for quite a while and was already a professional in the workforce. And now I had to share everything with him. And it was a little rocky in the beginning, but we had the same likes and dislikes, and he made it really easy for me. And through the years, I've been able to grow and be myself with his encouragement, and it got easier.
We knew that there was going to be a commitment involved, but it's something that has become and has just grown stronger and has really become a lot more clear as time has gone on, realizing what it is that you need to do to fully commit. And more so than, of course, when we first got married.
Yeah, I don't even think I thought about what commitment was. I just thought about being in love. So I think that covered it, being in love. So that was forever.
We had a great first year of marriage because we relocated. So geographically, we were right in between our families. So his family lived in Virginia, my family lived in California, and we relocated to Dallas. So we were like totally leave and cleave. It was like a picture because it was for the first time he and I were totally on our own entity. And if we had problems to solve, it was between us and not our families because geographically they weren't there.
Leaving and cleaving is forming a new identity as a married couple. It's not abandoning old relationships, rather seeing them through a new lens of you being one. It's important to take time to discuss your thoughts on leaving and cleaving and the role each will play in your upcoming marriage. Join us next time as we explore the importance of communication.